بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله أن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله سبحانه وتعالى وخير الهدى هدى نبينا صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. The last time we had our dars on Sunday, Akhwani, was about 3 weeks ago. We had the conferences that took place, so we suspended the durus. So before we were visited by this cold weather and the snow, it was 3 weeks ago in total. The last dars that we gave was the dars in which we talked about some of the etiquettes that are connected to the telephone, the mobile telephone or the telephone at home. And we explained in that first class about 6 or 7 different issues in regards to the deen that we should take into consideration. And we gave some examples as well as to what many people fall into, we have to be aware of as it relates to the mobile phone or the telephone in our homes. And one of the things that was mentioned was how the Quran and the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are both sources for teaching people adab, etiquettes, adab, how to talk to people and how to carry one's self, how to appear in public, how to deal with one's parents or anyone who's in a position of authority over you, and so forth and so on. So it's only befitting that we understand that we can extract from the Quran and from the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam a number of etiquettes as it relates to the telephone. So it's not something that we should look at as being something that's insignificant. The telephone has become a part of most of our lives. Even if a person didn't want to have a mobile phone, the quality of his life is going to be affected. It has made things easier for us, and it's actually from the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But like any ni'mah from the ni'mahs that Allah bestowed upon the people, if it's not used correctly, then it can be problematic. And if we didn't follow the Quran and the Sunnah in regards to whatever the ni'mah is, then there are going to be problems. So we wanted to get the most out of this everyday mundane issue that many people neglect, and we just take it for granted that it's there, but it's not being used correctly. So in addition to those 6 points that we mentioned before about the adab of the telephone, I want to mention another 6 issues today from the do's and the don'ts, things that we need to consider. First thing that I want to mention is one of the worst etiquettes that the Muslim can have in regards to the telephone and other than the telephone, and that is, with these mobile phones, it is not permissible in the religion of Al-Islam for a person to record the discussion of the person who is calling you. It's not permissible. Something that goes outside of the realm of Al-Islam, and it is prohibited in the deen. Whether the discussion that's being held between the two people is a discussion about the deen or the dunya, it is not permissible to record the kalam of the party on the other end without their knowledge and without their permission. Even if you were to call a scholar from the ulama of al-Islam and you wanted to get a fatwa, you wanted to get an opinion, then it is your obligation and it's your duty to let that scholar know who's on the other end that you're going to record his kalam. To let him know on the other end that he's on the loudspeaker. To talk to the person and they are not aware of what you're doing, it is a form of khiyana and a form of ghadar, it's treachery, and it's breaking the amana. It's from the characteristics of the hypocrites. And that is, he breaks the amana. The Prophet ﷺ, in showing how al-Islam makes us sensitive in the kalam that transpires between people, he gave us a number of hadith to teach us the etiquettes of kalam. He says, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam, إِذَا حَدَّثَ الرَّجُلَ ثُمَّ الْتَفَتَ فَهِيَ أَمَانَةٌ. If a man talks to another man and he's looking around, he looks around to see who's around. He doesn't want other people to listen to what he's saying. Then that kalam is an amana. So that hadith goes to show that there are sensitivities in regards to the speech that people deliver to you. It is an amana. He told the people sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam, al-majalis bil-amana. When you sit together and you talk between yourselves, 2 people are talking, 3 people, 4 people are talking between themselves, then that sitting in and of itself is an amana. If it's of the sensitive nature, then it's not permissible for anyone who's in that majlis to take that kalam and to take it to someone else, something that's not permissible. As for the dalil of the impermissibility of recording people's kalam without their knowledge, putting their kalam on the loudspeaker without their knowledge, whoever it happens to be, in the deen or the dunya, in the deen or the dunya. Prophet told us sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam, man istama'a ila hadithi qawmin wa hum lahu karihun subba fi udhanayhi al-anik yawm al-qiyamah. Anyone who listens to another person's speech, to a group of people's speech, or to another person's speech, anyone who listens to it and they don't like that to be done, they don't want that person to be listening to their speech like that. Prophet says sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Yawm al-Qiyamah, molten lead will be poured in both of his ears. So it's something that is not permissible without saying to the sheikh first, sheikh, you're on the loudspeaker, sheikh, we're recording your kalam. When the sheikh as-Sadlan hafidhahullah ta'ala was here with us, he gave us some speech in the library while he was eating, that when he gave that speech, it was of sensitive nature. If he were to say that same speech in the public, there would have been a lot of fitna and a lot of problems, maybe for the sheikh and definitely for other people. So, certain kalam is said at certain places and to certain people, and that same kalam, that same speech, is not said in certain places and to certain people. So as it relates to the mobile phone or other than that, it's not permissible in the deen to record people's kalam without their knowledge, This is from what is not in line with al-Islam, and it's not from an adab, it's bad adab. Number 2, ikhwani, from the etiquettes in regards to the mobile phone is the way that people record the names of people who are going to call them. Adab has to be observed in this issue. I want to take your name and your number, so when I write your name in my mobile phone, there's a correct way of doing that and there's an incorrect way of doing that. You can write a person's name in the mobile phone and it is a major sin, the way you wrote his name. Like what we heard some of the shabab do. His mother loves him, so his mother is always asking, where are you going? Where are you going to be? And she sticks her nose in his business, and rightly so, because she wants to know, what is he up to? So he writes his mother's name in the mobile phone as MI5. His mother, MI5, FBI, CIA. It's not permissible. That is ghiba in the deen of al-Islam, prohibited. Some brothers, when their wives call them, He has a regular ringtone for everyone, a regular ringtone. But when his wife calls him, he has the ringtone of the sound of a horror movie, like Friday the 13th. We heard a brother, he had the ringtone of the movie Friday the 13th. When the man was coming to kill people, that sound would always come on the movie 15 years ago. That's not permissible in the deen of al-Islam. Allah Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, وَلَا تَنَابِزُوا وَلَا تَنَابِزُوا. He says, Allah Ta'ala mentioned, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا يَسْخَرْ قَوْمٌ مِّن قَوْمٍ عَسَى أَن يَكُونُوا خَيْرًا مِّنْهُمْ وَلَا نِسَاءٌ مِّن نِسَاءٍ عَسَى أن يَكُنَّ خَيْرًا مِّنْهُنَّ وَلَا تَلْمِزُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَلَا تَنَابَزُوا بِالْأَلْقَابِ بِئْسَ الْإِسْمُ الْفُسُوقُ بَعْدَ الْإِيمَانِ وَمَنْ لَمْ يَتُوبْ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. O you who believe, do not let a group of you ridicule and look down upon another group from amongst you. It may be that the group that is being looked down upon is better than the ones who are looking down on them. And do not allow a group of women from amongst you to look down upon other women. It may be that the women who are being looked down upon and frowned upon are better than those who are looking down upon them. And do not call yourselves by offensive nicknames. Don't give yourselves names and describe each other in evil terms. Verily, it is an evil issue for a Muslim to give another Muslim an evil name after al-Iman. And whoever doesn't desist from doing so, then they are from the Zalimun. Now, as we mentioned in our class about the permissibility of certain types of ghibah, there are a number of brothers, they have the name Muhammad. So in his mobile phone, he wants to distinguish between 6 or 7 or 8 Muhammads in his mobile phone. He can't distinguish between them. So he brings out something that each one of them is peculiar to him. This Muhammad, he has a Lexus, so he calls him Lexus Muhammad or Muhammad Lexus, for an example. That Muhammad over there is living in Alam Rock, so he puts that in the mobile phone. There's nothing wrong with that. Muhammad, and he writes Paki, P-A-K-I, but he doesn't mean it in a derogatory term. He means it as the abbreviation of Pakistan. That's not his niyat to call him Paki and to put it down. If that's not his niyat, then that's permissible. As for describing or writing the name that is offensive, if that person had the ability to know or to see what you called him in that phone, then this is something that is not permissible. So all the way down to the way we record people's names in the phone, it is governed by the deen of al-Islam. As we mentioned in the first class, Allah Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, وَنَزَّلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابِ تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ. We have sent down to you the book, Ya Muhammad, making everything clear. How to write the person's name down in the telephone. وَمَا فَرَّطْنَا فِي الْكِتَابِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. We have not left out anything in this book. From the etiquettes, ikhwani, in regards to the telephone, is something that's common amongst the people, and we want to bring this to your attention. It's not permissible in the religion of al-Islam, in most instances, to pass people's telephone numbers off without their permission. It's not permissible. Someone wants to get another man's telephone number from you, you have to first get permission from him to do that. The telephone numbers that we have, it is a privilege. The people who gave us their numbers, it is a privilege. And it is an amana that you have to take care of. If someone wants the number, you simply have to say to the person, and he can't become upset, let me first get permission. Especially if you know the individual is an individual who's busy. He's an individual, or they are individuals like the ulama. They are the type of people who people will call them all the time, all day long. The police come to our masjid. They come to our masjid and they say, we're looking for Fulan. Do you have his telephone number? We say, yeah, this is his number. You give the police the number. Or other than the police. You shouldn't give people other people's telephone numbers without seeking their permission, unless they previously told you this is okay. If the person didn't tell you it's okay, then the origin of the ruling, the aslul hukum, if each person didn't tell you, you can give my number away, then you shouldn't give anyone's number away until you seek permission. The Prophet made it impermissible, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in an authentic hadith, لا ينظر الرجل في كتاب أخيه إلا بإذنه. It is not permissible for a man to look in the book of his brother without his brother's permission. The book belongs to him. The book has been left here, or is his property. You shouldn't come up and open his book. Maybe in the book he has a picture or some pictures of his wife. He had to go and get some pictures. He's going to send them off for the passport, or other than that. So he put them inside of the book. It's his personal property. It's his. It's not for you to come and to open it without first saying, can I please look at your book? This is from the adab of al-Islam. People's privacy in al-Islam, as we mentioned in the first class. When we call people, we have to respect their privacy. We have to respect their privacy. So it's something that shouldn't be done. So as I sit here and the people are here, anyone who comes to me and they want the telephone number of anyone who is sitting here, I shouldn't give them the number because none of you told me, yes, it's okay. Now once one of you say to me, I don't mind, you can give the number, and you know that I don't care. Now it's something that's a different ruling. But in regards to the people who are around us, those who we know, those people who their numbers are in our telephone, you shouldn't give people's numbers away. And I find that an etiquette that is simple, but it's being compromised day in and day out. From the etiquettes of the telephone is that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wa ala alihi wasallam has taught us something again that is commonplace. Some people, they don't have telephones. Or some people, they have phones, but they don't have minutes. They have those phones that are pay as you go. So they want to use other people's telephones in order to make calls. And they abuse the amana. They call long distances. Even in people's homes. They use people's home telephone landlines and they call overseas. And they talk for long extended periods of time. From the etiquettes of al-Islam in regards to the telephone is that you shouldn't do that. And as we mentioned before, the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, أكثر عذاب القبر في اللسان. The majority of what people will be punished for in the hellfire, in the grave, will be because of the tongue. So the adab of the qabr, the adab of the qabr, the majority of why people are being punished is a direct result of what was said. Ghiba, namima, lying, cursing people, saying that someone else was other than Allah, making dua to other than Allah, the lisan, big mushkila. From what will lead a person into the hellfire is stealing other people's money by using the telephone. Allah Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ. Do not devour, do not consume each other's monies with that which is false, with falsehood. You can't sell someone a faulty product. You can't charge people riba. You can't use someone's telephone and run up his telephone bill. The brothers who are here in your homes, your families, it's the same thing. It's not possible to waste the money of your parents by making telephone calls that are impermissible. Calling and wasting money. The Prophet told the people, 3 things have been made haram for you. كُرِّهَا إِلَيْكُمْ قِيلَ وَقَالْ وَكَثْرَةُ السُّؤَالِ وَإِضَاعَةُ الْمَالِ. These 3 things have been made haram. Makruh here doesn't mean dislike makruh. It means haram makruh. That's been made haram for you. He said, she said. Muslims shouldn't engage in he said this, she said that, but they said this, he said that. It's not from the adab of the rijal, the men. Also asking a lot of questions. Questions that are not pertinent. Questions that are argumentative. Questions that are a waste of time. Just being a person who's just always asking questions. And the third thing, wasting money. Wasting money. Everyone here has a religious responsibility to take care of that money that he uses on his mobile phone. 60 pounds, 70 pounds, 80 pounds, 100 pounds for a bill at the end of the month. And that money can go a long distance in helping our poor relatives from where we come from. Some people have 2 and 3 telephones. How can a man call Algeria on a mobile phone? And buying those calling cards over and over and over again just to waste it. There's something that should be avoided, something that we are responsible for. In addition to that, ikhwani, number 4, and as I mentioned, there are many issues, probably we're going to have to do another class as well, is the fact that in the deen, from the sha'air of al-Islam, the institutions of al-Islam, one of the dalils of a person's iman, is that people should have respect for everything connected to the deen. Should have respect for the masjid, should have respect for the Quran, should have respect for the Prophet of al-Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, should have respect for the hijab, should have respect for any and everything in al-Islam. Now obviously, certain things are greater in the scale than other things. Allah Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, ذَلِكَ وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. Whoever exalts and raises up high the institutions of Allah, of the deen, it's a sign of the taqwa of his heart. This ayat was revealed in regard to the question that the companions had about Safa and Marwa. In the times of al-Jahiliyyah, the kuffar of Quraysh, when they performed Hajj or Umrah, they used to walk between Safa and Marwa in Jahiliyyah, before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam became a Nabi Rasul. So they wanted to know, Ya Rasulullah, now that we're Muslims, should we go between Safa and Marwa? Should we do it? And Allah revealed one of those ayahs, Inna Safa wal Marwa min sha'airillah. Safa and Marwa are from the institutions of Allah, 2 mountains. Why? Because it's the rocks of the mountain? No, because what happened at the place with Hajar and her son Ismail and Ibrahim. So it's symbolic of some really important issues. Really important issues. What's greater than Safa and Marwa is the book of Allah. The book of Allah. So in regards to the mobile phone, the ulama of the Sunnah today, those scholars who are scholars of the Sunnah, scholars who pay attention to authentic hadith and giving fatwas based upon dalil, they are of the opinion, ikhwani, that it is not permissible and we should not use the ringtone of the Quran. Allowing the Quran to be the ringtone that the person is going to use. He can use some other thing other than the book of Allah. He doesn't want to put his own voice on. He wants something to be nice and catchy on his mobile. Then let him use some anashid without any music. Let him use some nice anashid that says some nice thing without using the book of Allah. Allah Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزُوًا. Do not take the ayat of Allah as a game. Don't play with the ayat of Allah. Don't play with them. This ayat was revealed in regards to a talaq, divorce, where the man would say, I divorce you 1,000,000 times. You're divorced 200 million times. Allah told the people, don't play around with the ayat of Allah. The Prophet, when the ayat was revealed, he told his companions, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam, thalatha, jidduhunna jidd, wa hazluhunna jidd. 3 things. When you talk about them and you're serious, in the religion they look like they're considered to be serious. And when you talk about them and you're joking, they're looked at in the deen as being serious. Whether you're serious or joking, these 3 things are looked at as being serious. Because they're, again, from the ayat of Allah, they're from the deen. He said the first thing is, marrying someone. When you marry them, you can't, the father, the wali of the girl can't come and say, okay, I marry you to my daughter. And then he finds someone who's more suitable. And then he comes and says, no, I was just joking. Can't say that. When you marry someone, it's serious in the religion. And if you turned around and said that I was joking, in the court of law, if they took you to the court of law, there are going to be some implications. The second thing is divorce. The man can't divorce the lady and then say, I was joking. The girl can't get a khula and then turn around and say, I was joking. And then the last thing and the final thing, when you say it seriously, it's serious. And when you say it playing around, jokingly, it's considered to be serious. Does anyone know? Yes, the third thing is freeing a slave. If you free the slave, once he's free, the Sayyid can't come and turn around and say that I was joking. So we should avoid, ikhwani, put in the book of Allah, the Quran, the recitation of the Quran. Shouldn't put in the mobile phone, shouldn't be put in the mobile phone as a ringtone. In addition to that, all of the money that the people are spending, and when we build our masajid, we insist that the masjid has to have all of the Quran written. in one line around the whole circumference of the masjid's wall. This is something that should be avoided. Allah explained in a number of ayat in the Quran why He revealed the Quran. He revealed it as a shifa, as a rahmah, as hidayah. He revealed it as a furqan. He revealed the Quran as a light. And other than that, nowhere do we find in the book of Allah did He reveal the Quran to be beautification. Not for our clothes, not for the wall of the masjid, and not for ringtone. So we should avoid using the ringtones as well in regards to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in its relationship to the mobile phone. Number 5, ikhwani, the issue of the pictures and being careful about what you put in your mobile phone. During the conference, there was a brother, he lost his mobile phone. He lost it. And someone brought it to us and we kept it from him, for him, and gave it to him in Luton. He disabled it by calling the people, telling them, stop my phone from anyone being able to make telephone calls. But if someone wanted to go inside of his phone after it was lost, he could have found inside of his phone possibly that which was and could have been an embarrassment. So pictures that are not necessary to take, like the pictures of our passports and our licenses and pictures of our children for the purpose of, if the child gets lost, la samahallah, something happens to the child, we want to have a photo on hand to show the authorities, this is what my baby looks like. But just taking pictures of your family, your wife, your daughters, or of age, this is something that should be avoided. In the Arabian Peninsula now, they have the fitna of people going to the parties on the women's side. And the girls are taking pictures of the hafla for the nikah. And then after the picture is taken, sometimes they send it to other people. Sometimes they put it on the YouTube. Sometimes they allow the men folk from amongst them to view it. Similar to it is the cameras. We pay a lot of money for the people to come, and they are going to record the actual nikah. And then after the nikah, that video or DVD is passed around to the members of the family. And the people who are not the maharam of the girl is watching it. And many people get married like that even. They sit with their sisters, their mother and the brother says, who's that girl? They say, that's your cousin so-and-so. He didn't know except from that DVD at the nikah. Who's that girl? Who's that girl? Without hijab, without anything being covered. So when we have weddings, as the man, it's your responsibility, it's my responsibility. In our homes, we have to teach our families about these etiquettes, the etiquettes of the telephone. One thing that I have to give some of the religious Arabs. The Arabs, especially in the Arabian Peninsula, some of them don't have any deen like everyone else, many places. But they do have that jealousy for their women. It's part of their culture, that many of them grow up with ghira for their women. So you'll find that the girl has no deen at all, but she'll wear jilbab and hijab in her society. She gets on the airplane, as soon as it takes off, gets in the middle of the sky, she'll take it off. But in her society, around her people, she'll wear that jilbab and that hijab. I know people from over there who, they don't allow their women folk to answer the phone. Unless no one's at home. Now I'm not saying that you have to do that or I have to do that. No one's going to call my house for the most part except the phone is for my wife. Phone is not even for me. It's not even for me. So for me to try to implement that, the Quran and the Sunnah didn't say to do that, first of all. Our culture, second of all, doesn't say to do that. Thirdly, the reality of it, it will be difficult for most of us. But we have a responsibility to be on top of the job in regards to how are we going to deal with this telephone in the house? When do you allow your teenage daughter to be on the phone? How long is your wife allowed to be on the phone? And so forth and so on. We talked about that in the first class, about wasting time, the issue of time in regards to the telephone. Having etiquette when we call the sheikh, when we call the scholar. How to be when you call the scholar. There's adab, etiquettes that have to be observed. So the shahid and the point, ikhwani, is be careful about what you put in the telephone in the way of pictures. You never know, the phone may get lost, and if it does get lost, then there is a problem. Which brings us to the other issue, and it's the last issue, the issue of losing the telephone. Is it permissible, after we found a person's telephone, to go inside of the telephone in order to find out whose telephone it is? And this issue with telephones, Khwani, I advise you to go on the internet, and there is a site there called lostphone.com, where they teach you things about what to do and what not to do to keep yourself protected from the many criminals who prey on people. They prey on you when you go to the ATM machine. You have to know how to go to the ATM machine. They teach you about how to save information in your phone about your bank statements and your private information, and how you should not put in your telephone, for an example, home number, so that anyone who finds your phone, they go through it and they find, okay, this is his home number. They start to find out different information about you. So in regards to the person who loses his telephone, it is permissible to go inside of a person's telephone in an attempt to try to find out, how do you contact him? By looking for names like mother, father, something like that, even home number, something like that. Because the Prophet has allowed us, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, when we lose things, he taught us the etiquette in Islam of losing something. Show me where that is in Christianity. Show me where that is in Judaism. If a person lost something in our religion, there are things that we do and there are things that we should not do. Just to get a few, inshallah. What do we do or we don't do if someone loses something? If you find something that was lost, you just don't take it. Unless it's something that's cheap. You found a pen, it's a nice pen in the middle of the street. You don't just leave it there for the car to come and damage it. You take it and you can keep that. The man was in the desert. And he found the camel in the middle of the desert. In the middle of the desert. He took the camel and he came and told the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was in the desert, lost, I took him. The Prophet said, you did good. It was either for you or for the wolf. So you're not going to just leave the camel in the desert. So it doesn't belong to you if you find it. Number 2. Akhi. A do or a don't. What you should do or what you shouldn't do if you find something from the etiquettes in Islam. Okay. Akhi Ahmed. If you find something, what should you do, you should not do? Some of us are taxi drivers. You find in the back seat 25,000 pounds. What are some of the do's and the don'ts for what you find in Islam?
If you find that amount of money, Sheikh, you take it to the police station. Last year when I was in train, I found a good wallet. So I just take and leave it to the person
who works there. Even Ikhwani, now one of the things, Ikhwani, from the etiquette is if you found a wallet, you shouldn't just come and tell people I found a wallet and it had a lot of money and it had 25,000 pounds, I found this. No. You keep it for yourself and you announce it for 1 year. For 1 year you announce it. I found a wallet. If anyone lost a wallet, come and see me. He puts that in the newspaper. He puts that up in the masjid's bulletin board. He lets the people know. If 1 year rolls around and no one came to claim it in this deen, that's your money after 1 year. That's your money, you go off with it. But you have to announce it for 1 year. Also in the masjid, if you were to find something or lose something, you shouldn't walk around saying, oh, I lost my shoes, I lost my jacket, anyone see my keys, you see my telephone, I lost this, I lost that. Prophet said anyone who does that, they make dua against them. And Imam al-Bukhari in his book, Al-Adab al-Mufrad, not Sahih Bukhari, has another book about adab, about etiquettes, about everything. There's a chapter about losing things and finding things. In the books of hadith, in the books of fiqh, there's always the chapter about losing things and finding things. What do you do? So the point here is, If someone lost something in our deen, there is a way of going about it. He lost a BlackBerry telephone, which is quite expensive, 300 pounds or more. He can turn it into the masjid, which is better. The masjid is responsible for that. Plus we have cameras. And in this masjid it has happened where people got in trouble because of the cameras. If it's in the masjid, turn it into the masjid. If it's not in the masjid, you announce it for 1 year. People don't come and claim it without giving details. I found the telephone. No one claims it. In a year's time, that is your property. In the meantime, you can't use it. It's not for you to use. But if you were to look for the person, you have the ability to try to find out who this phone belongs to, and that is something you should do. Dialing the last number, for an example, is the safest way. This way you won't have to go into the telephone. It may be that you'll see something that is embarrassing or something that was only for that man or lady's eyes to see. So dialing the last phone, I found this person's telephone number and so on, and dealing with it like that. Dialing your number, dialing other numbers in the phone, you have to be creative in the issue. So those are the 6 issues we wanted to mention today. Next week we're going to culminate this with 6 of the final dangerous issues, inshallah, in regards to the mobile phone and the phone at the house as well. And we ask Allah Ta'ala for His tawfiq and the sadat. You brothers have any questions concerning today's issue? هل عندكم شيء؟ أيوة أخي.
Like if you find something, if there's any hadith, make announcements 3 times. Like, for example, I found something here, and then we make announcements 3 times.
I don't know that there's a hadith that say you should make the announcement 3 times. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. What I know is you should make an announcement for a year. So it could be probably more than 3 times. Probably. Allah knows best. Akhi Abu Umar. Yes, it's permissible to put the Quran in the telephone with the intent of listening to the Kitab of Allah. In this case, it becomes similar to the CD player or the radio, the cassette player. Is permissible. But for the Quran to be used as a munabbih, something that's going to make you pay attention and get your attention, shouldn't be done. It's disrespect and ihana to the Quran. Ihana to the Quran. When the Prophet was reading the book of Allah, when the Prophet ﷺ told Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, read the Quran. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud started to read. He said, you want me to read it and it was revealed on you? He said, I love to hear it from other than me. He started to read the Quran. When he came to the last completion of the ayat, the Prophet said, Hasbuka, that's enough. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, I looked at him and he was crying. So from that, the scholars of Al-Islam are of the opinion that when we want to interrupt people with the Quran, or when you want to stop reading the Quran and you want to talk, or you want to turn off the cassette or the CD, you should do so at the end of the ayat, in respect of the Quran. At the end of the ayat. And not in the middle of the Quran. So many times, if a person has the ringtone as the Quran, he just stops it in the middle of the kalam of Allah. And you may stop it on an ayat that it shouldn't be stopped at that place. You shouldn't stop reciting the Quran at that place. So you'll see inside of the Quran, over the letters, over the ayat, it'll have la, telling you don't stop here. There are certain places in the Quran. If you stop there, you're reading the Quran incorrectly. And if you know what you're doing, you're sinning. And then there are other places where it's wajib for you to stop. That if you go beyond that point, you're sinning if you know what you're doing. And Allah knows best. Ahi, ideal. We're going to deal with that next week, inshallah ta'ala, concerning the text messages and how the Muslim has to be on a minhaj of, again, knowing how to deal with the kalam that we hear, whether it comes from Ahl al-Kitab, and whether it comes from the text messages, whether it comes from mass emails. Seems like the Muslim ummah, we're the easiest people to fool. You can get the Muslims to believe almost anything. on Oprah Winfrey. Tommy Hilfiger, the designer guy, came on Oprah Winfrey and he started speaking bad about Islam and the Muslims and the Quran. So therefore we should boycott Tommy Hilfiger products. Send that to the Muslims and they'll just send it all over the world. Where's the dalil for that? Where's the proof for that? And again, Ikhwani, there is a site, we'll tell you next week, inshallah, where you can find out all of those fake emails. All of those fake emails. And there are many. Any more questions, Ikhwani? The best ringtone? It's hard to say what's the best ringtone. This is one of the problems of the technology of the world today. Because the adab, the etiquettes that we get a lot of the rulings about the telephone, they come from the adab that the Quran and the Sunnah tell us about how to knock and how to come to people's homes. And the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that the malaika do not enter into a home where there is a bell, a jaras. And on our doors there are bells, the telephone is a bell, and so forth and so on. But how do we get away from it? Do you disengage the bell in your house? How do we get away from it? So the point is, the best ringtone is the one is the most subtle and the most generic. The one that's the most subtle and the most generic. Avoid the Quran. Avoid music. Avoid that which is iz'aj. Iz'aj. Noise. And it's something that if people hear it, they're going to say, what are you doing? Try to avoid those types of ringtones. But what's the best one? I can't say what's the best one. Fadli ya Sheikh.
For example, giving the telephone number of the other person. Back home, for example, your relative is calling you and asking his son telephone. 6 hours from here in America. In the morning you might be from somebody, they're calling you and they're asking you the telephone of his son or sister.
That's a good question, Ikhwani. In every rule, there is an exception to that rule. Extenuating circumstances, people have to apply, they have to use their intellect. The man came to ask the Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam about al-ithm. Al-ithm, what's a sin, ya Rasulullah? How do I know that something is a sin? He said, al-ithm ma haka fi sadrak wa karihta an yattala alayhi an-nas wa law aftaka an-nas bihi. He said the sin is that thing that it stays in your heart and it goes back and forth. And you don't like people to know about that thing. And even if the people say, don't worry, don't worry, it's okay. But it's still in your heart. You have a problem with it. If you have a fitrah and your heart is salim, then you yourself, he told the other man, istafti qalbak. You want to know what the sin? Consult your heart. That's for the heart that's salim. That's for the person who has taqwa, wara. As for the one whose heart is dead, no, it's not the case. So now, someone here, the police come to me. They say to me, hey, do you have Brother Ahmed's telephone number? We want to contact him. I'm going to say, let me get back to you. I have to ask him first. Someone from the community. I need his number. He didn't say it's life or death. I said, I'll get back to him. But someone like in this case, all the way overseas, we know the difficulty in dealing with this time and the space that separates us between this place and the countries where we come from. You have to use your discretion in this case. My auntie, my wife's auntie, calls me to ask for her number. I'm going to say, let me get my wife's permission first, auntie. No, that's not etiquette right there. It's not etiquette. But if I know that's an auntie that makes fitting problems, then I say to her, hey, auntie, let me get the number. Let me get the number, inshallah, and I'll give you the number, and so forth and so on. So you use your discretion. Any more questions? Ikhwani fillah, fadli ya ahi.
What about the telephone numbers that you find on the internet or scholars, for example?
The numbers for the scholars, Ikhwani, I'm telling you, when it comes to the ulama, this is when there are certain people, we wanted to mention this next week, inshallah. Aisha said that, Umirna an nunazzil an-nas manazilahum. We have been commanded to put people in their proper places. Look at your parents as the parent. The Imam of the masjid, look at him as the Imam of the masjid. The person who is older of age, he's of age, look at him that way. Your wife's father, look at him that way. Don't treat everyone the same way. Some people deserve more respect. Some people deserve that you don't say anything when you're upset with them. You just have to eat humble pie. So the ulama, they are in a special position. So when we call them, there's certain things we should say and certain things we should avoid. We shouldn't call them out his personal private number. There's a number on the internet, that's for the public. That's his job, to give fatwa at a certain time, certain day. Call him, no problem. But on his private number, because everyone is not the same, ikhwani, the aqul of the people is different. This young brother Nihad, he'll call about something very serious, and he'll get straight to the point. He'll do the etiquette. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope you're doing okay, Sheikh. May Allah give you your reward. I have a question. You give me permission to ask? Atfaddal. My question is, what is the permissibility of doing a heart transplant? Sheikh gives his answer. He makes dua for him. And then he cuts off the discussion with the etiquette. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. That's it. Right to the point. Because he's intelligent. But then you have the other individual who calls the Sheikh. Yeah, Sheikh, I just want to know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm cutting my nails. Should I start off with the little toe or the big toe? Which one is the sunnah, ya Sheikh? You guys are laughing. There are people who are like that. And there's nothing in the religion that we say is insignificant. But there's a time and a place for everything. That's not the time and that's not the place for that question. So the numbers on the internet, the numbers that are for public access, call them in those times that you call, no problem. As for the personal private numbers, don't give the Sheikh's personal private number away. Akhi, ideally went over it. Anyone who didn't ask a question, Ikhwani? Tfadli, Akhi. Yeah, this is another reason, Ikhwani, why we should avoid putting the Quran on the telephone as a ringtone, taking it into the hammam. Prophet didn't like, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to make the dhikr of Allah in the bathroom, as he was in the bathroom or in the toilet, and the man came, he was making wudu, and the man came and gave him salams. The Prophet didn't return the salams. And then after completing the wudu, he said, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, inni karihtu an afkurullah ila at-tahara. I hated to mention Allah while I was in a state of impurity. So he prohibited us from talking while we're in the bathroom, in the toilet. Akramakumullah wa taharullah ayyamukum wa hayatikum. So we shouldn't be talking to one another. So what about the kalam of Allah being played in the toilet? What about people who take religious books into the toilet? That's what the non-Muslims do. They take the Bible into the toilet. They have magazines and so forth, so on. That's not from the adab of al-Islam. Can I say taking a newspaper in the toilet is haram? I'm not going to say that's haram, but it's not from the etiquette of the Muslims. Muslims never were known to do that. You go into the toilet to hurry up and get done with what it is you have to do and you get out of the toilet. It's not a place where the person is just relaxing, reading a newspaper. That's from the adab of the people, la dina lahum, la dina lahum. But I'm not going to say it's haram. What you shouldn't do is take religious materials in there, especially. Okay, the last question, Abu Umar, inshallah.
Some people want to use your phone and they go far away from you and you don't know what they're talking about something.
If a person were to take the phone, I think if you trusted him to give him your telephone, if you trusted him like that, it doesn't necessitate that you have to be allowed to listen to his discussion. Doesn't mean that. So if you trusted him with the phone, you should trust that he's not going to call someone who's going to get you in trouble, or he's not calling about something that goes against the deen. So it's not a necessity. Whoever you allow to use your phone, you should be allowed to listen to him. Your neighbor, your relative uses the landline. Because it's your phone, you should be allowed to listen to it. It's something that is not the case. Either trust him or don't trust him. But if you had reason to not trust him, then it's within your rights to say, talk right here. Don't take my phone away. And Allah, He is A'la and A'lam. هذا وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين.